These files were never meant to be public, but someone reopened them. This is the Dark Bureau. Under the dim lights of a midnight port, a cargo ship glides across the South China Sea. Its manifest claims the containers hold recycled plastic, slated for reprocessing and a second life. But when a customs agent crack open one steel door, heaps of crushed circuit boards spill out. Syringes tumble from slashed bags, intermingled with acrid-smelling soiled gauze and cracked screens. Flecks of heavy metals mix with rainwater, trickling onto the rusted deck. Yet, in the neon-lit offices lining the docks, inspectors overworked and under pressure sign off on the manifest. The paperwork, perfectly in order, asserts the load is non-hazardous. The reality, however, is hidden in plain sight, a lie stamped in ink, destined to vanish as the containers move inland. Each shipment, labelled recycled, masks a deeper, more lucrative transaction. In boardrooms and brokerage offices thousands of miles apart, contracts are exchanged not just for the cargo, but for the appearance of environmental responsibility. In North America and Europe, governments tout rising recycling rates, producers advertise closed loops and sustainable promises. But beneath compliance paperwork, a separate market metabolises the cost of disposal. As environmental regulations rise, so do the incentives to outsource the problem. Mountains of unsorted plastic, toxic electronics, and medical debris, deemed too expensive, complex, or risky to process at home, are exported quietly to developing ports. Nations across Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, and West Africa become the world's dumping grounds. The illusion is recycling, improvement, progress. The reality is environmental crime, transnational and shadowed, that capitalises on the hunger for cheap labour and the lack of regulatory muscle. At the system's centre lies the Basel Convention. This international treaty, adopted nearly 3 decades ago, is meant to halt the transfer of hazardous waste from wealthy to less developed nations. Its language is clear: protect human health and the environment. In execution, however, the lines blur. Shipments are regularly reclassified as second-hand goods or raw materials for recycling. Cardboard fronts pop up overnight, providing temporary legitimacy for illegal operations, while crate loads of e-waste, batteries, plastics, and hydrocarbon-laced trash are routed through webworks of intermediaries. Certificates that begin as legitimate are doctored or forged as they change hands. The average container's contents may be repacked 3 or 4 times before reaching its final end. A location far from regulated processing, often an open field, a riverbank, or a clandestine furnace. Beneath the surface, institutional vulnerabilities enable the trade scale. Port authorities across the globe process tens of thousands of containers daily. Systems set up to spot check for illicit goods face a whirlwind of ever-shifting codes, commodity categories and languages. Even within enforcement agencies, resource constraints, conflicting mandates and political pressure to maintain export economies create loopholes. Port competition is fierce. Officials are quietly disincentivised from slowing the flow. For every Basel seizure, dozens, if not hundreds, of shipments slip through. The core issue, legal boundaries, are no match for the elasticity of global commerce and the ingenuity of bad actors. Legitimate and illicit players become indistinguishable in the murk. In Europe, brokers convene in offices that blend the trappings of legality with the flexibility of criminal enterprise. Over espressos, they strike deals to classify end-of-life computers as working used goods. These devices, aged beyond genuine reuse, are destined not for repair shops, but for the burning pits and backroom acid baths of Nigeria and Ghana. The same sleight of hand plays out in the plastic scrap trade as contaminated loads, often intermixed with food waste or hazardous residue, are coded as homogeneous and shipped in bulk, with critical contamination data erased on falsified documents. Tracking a single shipment, a team of journalists uncovered its journey through at least 5 countries. a trail designed to confuse and obscure. The container's registry would swap companies and flags every border. It might return to the same intermediary, recertified, and issued new paperwork each time. The contents are fungible, the shell companies ephemeral. Finally, the waste lands inland, dumped at dawn in a clearing outside Jakarta. When local inspectors raid a suspected warehouse, they find boxes stamped with green arrows and recycling symbols, leaking fluorescent sludge. By then, the accountable parties, original shippers and brokers, are long gone, leaving only temporary workers, forged receipts, and lists of disconnected phone numbers. The financial incentive keeps the wheels spinning. The illegal global waste trade is valued at up to $12 billion annually, according to conservative United Nations estimates. What drives this immense flow is not just the savings from evading local disposal costs, but the profits from selling legitimacy, repackaged as paperwork, resale certificates, or quota credits to governments seeking green credentials. In developing nations, the economic calculus is sharper. Containers of foreign waste bring jobs, immediate cash, and sometimes community development funds. But the legacies of those shipments are long-lived. Carcinogens in water, heavy metals in fish, groundwater rendered undrinkable, soils too poisoned for crops. Entire riverine and coastal ecosystems are destabilised within a generation. Attempts at systemic reform expose institutional weaknesses. Regulatory bodies try to fortify their inspection protocols. Some ports institute digital tracking or AI-based flagging for suspicious cargo. Yet the networks adapt. Commodity codes are revised. Smugglers ensure cargo is divided into legally ambiguous fractions, falling just under regulatory triggers. Bribery persists, sometimes disguised as consulting fees or customs facilitation payments. Interpol and Europol conduct regular operations, 30 days at sea, revealing in just one coordinated effort over 1,000 illicit loads. Still, for every dramatic police raid, there is a flood of uninspected, apparently compliant containers, undisturbed and unremarked. The human fallout is brutal and direct. In Lagos and Accra, young boys strip insulation from obsolete appliances, burning wires and plastic sheathing to extract copper. Black smoke coils above neighbourhoods, saturating the air with dioxins and phthalates. Mercury spills from shattered screens and batteries, collecting in drainage ditches that feed local crops. In rural Malaysia and Vietnam, illegal dumps rise overnight at the edge of banana groves. Villagers wake to the sting of chemically laced fires. Rivers run cloudy with residues that cause skin lesions and birth defects. Local authorities, many of them new to the problem or hamstrung by corruption, struggle with impossible choices. Jobs for their citizens today versus poisoned futures. The institutional response is reactive, often fragmented. When a dramatic incident breaks, such as the discovery of radioactive waste in an Indonesian port or the burning of mountains of unclaimed foreign plastic, governments may issue embargoes or announce parliamentary inquiries. New task forces are convened. Footage of seizure operations appears on local news. Ports tighten controls for a season, adding X-ray scans or requiring more extensive documentation. Still, shippers move quickly, rerouting waste through alternative corridors. Cambodia, if Malaysia cracks down, Turkey if Croatia refuses entry. Coordination between customs, environmental agencies and police falters amid finger-pointing and a lack of unified databases. Whistleblowers add a devastating dimension. An industry insider leaks records showing that respected multinational corporations, household names in electronics or packaged goods, have in fact routed their own wastes through layers of dubious subcontractors. Certificates issued at headquarters for eco-responsible handling are sold on, passed along confusing chains of custody. Official investigations stall amid claims of plausible deniability, and the challenges of pursuing liability across borders. Meanwhile, the lure of fast money leads smaller governments, desperate for foreign exchange or eager to show green growth, to quietly permit questionable imports despite widespread local protest. Sometimes the imports are justified under cover of supporting burgeoning domestic recycling industries, a claim often used to fend off criticism until after the damage is done. Structural weaknesses persist. Most enforcement agencies lack resources for thorough physical checks. Ports processing tens of thousands of shipments daily rely heavily on document-based review systems. With the overwhelming surge in global trade, only a sliver of containers are checked in detail, presenting opportunities for even average players to risk shipping non-compliant waste. Further, logistical giants and shipping lines find themselves in difficult positions, pressed to maximise volume and profit, and facing limited recourse to verify the origin and fate of waste cargoes. They become unwitting and at times willfully blind participants in the illegal trade. In the rarer cases of prosecution, criminal penalties are minimal compared to the scale of profit, often limited to fines that are easily absorbed as costs of doing business. Consequences interlock across systems. After a wave of public revelations, European nations introduce embargoes on high-risk plastic scrap exports, triggering a chain reaction as containers pile up in ports. Southeast Asian governments, alarmed by contamination scandals, return shiploads to their countries of origin or demand new legal frameworks. Activist groups occupy port entrances. Environmental justice campaigners document cancer clusters, poisoned fish, and miscarriages. Policymakers convene emergency hearings, promising reform. Meanwhile, global commodity shortages prompt renewed lobbying from waste-generating industries, protesting the loss of critical raw materials for recycling. In the background, shadow markets rush to fill the regulatory vacuum. Technology provides only partial answers. Startups and public agencies pin hopes on AI-based scanners at ports, blockchain-enabled manifests, and satellite tracking of container movements. Investigators adapt, deploying new kinds of software to map email traffic and real-time financing threads. Yet the criminal networks respond with equal ingenuity, coining new code words, forging digital signatures, and enlisting insiders to override alarm signals. Synthetic compounds, lithium batteries, and composite plastics defeat even the most advanced sorters, giving rise to new forms of semi-legal or grey market waste. The market adjusts faster than any system designed to monitor it. Prosecution rates remain abysmally low. Global studies estimate that for every high-profile conviction, often hailed as exemplary by authorities, there remain thousands of untouched actors, intermediaries, brokers, financiers, and facilitators. Legal and regulatory obstacles, cross-border jurisdictional issues, and the ephemeral nature of companies involved ensure that liabilities remain diffuse and accountability elusive. Warehouses full of court documents, stacks of sealed investigation files outnumber the handful of convictions each year. For key decision-makers, dissolution of one shell company and reincorporation elsewhere is simple paperwork, not punishment. The real cost is exported invisibly. In Western cities, the illusion of effective recycling persists. Clean bins emptied every week, celebratory advertising from major brands, and legislative targets cited as victories. Rarely do affluent consumers see the end state: heaps of plastic choking far-off rivers, toxic dust settling in small-town African homes, generations of children exposed to neurotoxins. Environmental and human health costs are quietly laundered through statistics and outsourced supply chains. Policymakers in the global north, pressured by voters and recycling lobbies, chase moving targets, adjusting quotas and tweaking definitions, but lagging perpetually behind the web of illicit actors. As long as plastic production surges, technological fixes outpace regulation, and the economic advantage of exporting waste remains, the incentives for environmental crime persist. The politics of green growth, eagerly promoted by public officials and industry alike, mask the underlying continuity of harm, the business of managing environmental costs by making them disappear elsewhere. Criminal organisations, shipping conglomerates and shadow bankers collaborate as partners of convenience. Penalties are light, rewards high, and markets fluid. The same routes used for drugs and wildlife trafficking often carry black market waste, enabled by institutional fatigue or complicity. Overproduction and regulatory gaps reinforce one another, ensuring steady demand. Each time a loophole closes, one nation tightening import rules, one treaty revised, another opens, whether through reclassification, corrupt officials, or redirection to new jurisdictions with laxer oversight. At the deepest level, the real lords of waste profit not from chaos, but from the maintenance of illusion, offering plausible order while exporting irreversible damage. For now, exporters and importers, brokers and facilitators remain tightly bound by this hidden economy. Until more than just paperwork and policy evolve, the global trade in waste remains a business of displacement, contamination, and profound inequality. Its true costs borne by those whose voices are seldom heard, far from the ports where it all begins.